Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Based in Reality. Um, welcome to the channel. Tonight we're going to talk about a difficult topic. I'm just going to do a brief piece on something that is really very much important to us all. Anybody who cares about children should be able to hang in here with me for a few minutes and really think about what I'm saying. Okay, so this is a little bit of an informative call to action piece. Okay, all right, so we're going to be talking about the death penalty for these child sex traffickers. The thing with child sex trafficking is that a lot of these children end up dying from the process of their bodies undergoing, repetitive rape. And so this is the most heinous thing, I can think of. Also, the crime involves kidnapping children. It involves drugging children. It involves many times videotaping the rape. Then the video footage is then trafficked and sold as child porn. So my whole point in today's episode is that those individuals who have a direct role in the kidnapping of children, the rape of children, the sale of children to other individuals who come in and rape the children, the videoing and the sale of that material should all receive the death penalty. The death penalty is a deterrent for some. And anybody that we can reduce, in terms of the number of these crimes being committed, it's worth it. The thing with the death penalty, though, is that we need it executed promptly. It needs to be swiftly carried out. Otherwise, it is not really justice. It's not really doing what it's supposed to do. Because sometimes child rapists get life imprisonment without parole. That's a good scenario there. But many times that doesn't even happen. So I'm advocating for no long, lengthy trial at the taxpayer's expense. I am advocating for a fast track of justice for these types of cases, that they go to court immediately. They're fast tracked. Maybe there is a special court, like you have drug court, DUI court, that type of thing. Maybe we need to set up courts that are just for sex trafficking, and those cases are handled expeditiously and routed toward the death penalty sentence and completion thereof. So what countries have the death penalty? Many that have very large populations. Now, we don't have a federally imposed death penalty. It's not a federal law, but I'm going to get into that in a minute. Saudi Arabia, China. I'm proud of that fact that China, I feel good about that. Regarding China, the United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, Indonesia in 2016 enacted the death penalty because they were having an increase in child rape. Also, India in 2018 set up a death penalty for perpetrators who victimize children that are under the age of 12. And some of these countries, Nigeria and UAE, the death penalty applies in cases where the victims are 14 years of age or younger. Now, what's our story here in the U.S.? So here in the U.S., the Supreme Court of the United States voted down a death penalty case for a child rapist. His name was Patrick Kennedy, and he had raped his 8-year-old stepdaughter. Now, the little girl, thank God, did not die from medical duress and so forth. So, even though Louisiana had the death penalty for child rape, and so did 5 other states in our country at that time, this is 2008, this person appealed the case to the Supreme Court, stating, Well, I did not kill this child, therefore, why should I have my life taken? And in a 5-4 split decision, it was close. The Justice Kennedy wrote the majority opinion, and he basically stated that, I'm going to paraphrase, that it is considered cruel and unusual punishment, think of our 8th Amendment to the Constitution, to give the death penalty to someone who did not, you know, discharge the case of murder. They did not assist in the murder of a child. They were not solely directly responsible for the murder of a child. Therefore, they should not receive a death penalty. So that's what happened in that case. But fast forward to today. So at that time in 2008, there were 6 states that had the death penalty. Okay, but in 2023, Florida enacted the death penalty for child rape. And then it just started going from there. We had Tennessee, their governor, Bill Lee, signed into law the death penalty. Idaho, this year in March, Governor Brad Little signed their death penalty bill into law. Oklahoma, this year in May, Governor Kevin Stitt signed that into law. And we have this year the legislation that's going through the process. It exists in Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Virginia. And then last year in Idaho and Arizona, New Mexico, and South Dakota, legislation went through. Those states have not yet signed their legislation into law. Okay, so that's about 17 or so states, but we need all states to do this, and not just do it in print only. Don't just have a law that just gets dusty, on the books. We need this to be, enacted and executed on. I keep using that word, executed. I don't mean to, but I can't think of another word right now. But I guess it works as good as any other. So it needs to be carried out. And like I'm arguing and advocating today, it needs to be done swiftly. Now, I noticed that California is nowhere to be listed here. They don't even have legislation going through their system. That's interesting. I would really encourage anybody watching to advocate with their congressional representative or their state senator or directly to Governor Newsom that is something that needs to happen. Because, for example, Texas was one of the original 6 back in 2008 that did have the child rape death penalty. Texas is the #1 state in our country for child sex trafficking. And Nevada is very close to that. But California is also a border state with Mexico. So you would think that California would share some of the same sentiments that Texas has, as they are a border state. And we know that there is mass illegal migration, and we know that that has also been documented well and enough with cartel sex trafficking rings. So I'm very interested in seeing Governor Gavin Newsom step up to the plate to protect children. American children, South American children need to be protected, and we need to send the signal far and wide to any of these demented, decrepit individuals that if they set out to kidnap, drug, sell to other people, rape themselves, film that, that they are not looking at life imprisonment with no opportunity for parole. They are looking at a quick route and path to the death penalty. And I believe that that's the only way to see some deterrence. Let me just give you one more point on this, and that is a recent bust in Texas, North Texas. 244 individuals were busted in the middle of June, so, about 5 weeks ago, with child sex crimes. So what we have in that situation is 109 children being rescued by a multi entity operation. So you have the sheriff's department, you have a number of different jurisdictions working together, okay, different agencies and so forth. So the 244 offenders were arrested with 368 total charges filed. Now, 21 of these 244 people were already registered sex offenders. And this is the point of the episode that I'm making right now. If you have a registered sex offender who is out and free, that's a problem. That's a problem. If the sex offender has been found guilty of rape, okay, and I'm not talking about, a lewd act or, something like that, but I'm talking about these are offenders who have raped a child, even if it was one time, death penalty. Because these 21, if they were indeed convicted of sexual assault, wouldn't be around to do this. So I know that this topic is very, severe, but this is what needs to happen, because we are seeing an increase in arrests, an increase in child sex trafficking rings that are organized, where we have multiple people that are working in concert to kidnap children. Some of these children they know they're related to. And we know that the child pornography is made from these rape acts. So there was 213 terabytes of data that was examined in this huge bust 5 weeks ago in North Texas. It says much of it contained graphic evidence of child exploitation. Okay, so we know that that is what goes on. Okay, in Fort Worth, Texas, the FBI, assisted by the Fort Worth Police Department, so we've got, law enforcement working together, busted an individual named Michael Huffman, who looks like Santa Claus. And maybe I can put his picture up. But that's it. He looks completely, he looks like Santa, guys. And anyhow, he was charged with distributing and possessing the child pornography, which included many, many images of an adult male engaged in a sex act with a female child. When he was busted and the agents went to his home to grab him, he was there on his laptop looking at the child porn. He faces only 20 years. Now, I know he looks like Santa, so he's an older man. But this is what I'm saying. I believe that our penalties in the U.S. are ineffective. I feel they're far too weak. 20 years? 20 years. He is a distributor and a possessor of child pornography. Those penalties need to be raised so much higher than they currently are. Okay, so hats off to Texas and their operation. It was called Operation Soteria Shield. Operation Soteria Shield was a massive team effort. It included over 200 officers and staff from multiple jurisdictions, as I said earlier. And they were effective in this one bust. So, guys, obviously we need to see a lot more of that coordination amongst departments and agencies, and that was excellent. 1,130 digital devices were seized in this ring. So let's say those were phones and laptops. Does that indicate that those were all being used to film and to watch, the rape of children? Okay. That's a lot of devices, and yet only, 244 people were arrested. So, I guess they couldn't get them all, right? But hopefully, with the digital information on those devices, they might be able to track down the other, maybe 800, 900 people who might be involved and got away. So, guys, as I wrap this up, let me know what you think about a death penalty for the trafficking of children. That means you drug them, you kidnap them, you get them to the facility, the storm cellar, which is what is being used. I'm seeing that come up in some of these news articles. That's the person who gets the kids, and they often are coordinating with other people to locate these kids. They might be coordinating with a coach, they might be coordinating with a teacher, but some of these kidnappers actually they know the kids, they have access to the kids already. Those people need the death penalty. Do you agree with that? Because those kids wouldn't be raped and some of them die if that person wasn't starting the whole thing up by grabbing up these kids. Imagine if this was your kid. The Johns need to get the death penalty. The people involved in the production of the material, they need to get the death penalty. So I believe that's what we've got to do. And I mentioned just a handful of countries, but there are more than that employ the death penalty. And we know India has just a ton of people. China has over 2 billion people. India has more than 1 billion people. And so I'm glad that they have that. But we are a big nation as well, and we have a big problem in this area. And it's high time that we have a federal blanket law for that. And also specific courts to quickly expedite and execute on these laws. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Think smart, act accordingly. Contact your congressperson, your congressional rep, your state senator, or your governor to let them know what you think about this. And Gavin Newsom heads a very big and powerful state in our country, and it's shocking that California does not already have this. And so I would really want to see Governor Newsom, please consider promoting that legislation in your state. And I would say that to all the governors who do not have this in their state, which is the majority of the states. So we can do better, guys, and we can care about these children, whether they're American, South American, wherever they're coming from. Their lives matter. All of their little lives matter. All right, guys, thank you so much. See you next time.